Welcome back to the Inspirit Show, where we bring you the latest wisdom to build high performance team and super organization. Today we have with us Frederick Correa, who is HR leader with Darashaw, and we are going to discuss on a topic of employability and career acceleration. Frederick has several master degrees to his name and currently is pursuing PhD in employability, and he is verge of completing it. And finally, he is also coming up with a book named What They Don't Teach You in B Schools. So let's explore more with Frederick how to accelerate your career and what are the factors which affects employability. Welcome to the show, Frederick.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Right. Hi, Frederick. And we are all geared up to learn more from you. So, employability, that's the topic for today. And I want to hear it from you. What does employability actually mean? Because you have such an extensive study, in this context. And what does it really mean for let's say, a fresher or a MBA student, particularly?
All right. So, there are a lot of definitions of employability, and a lot of authors in various research have given a very different version of employability, and there are different theories of employability. What I have done and what I'll do for you is simplify it into a very simple construct. My study is on employer satisfaction, and I use that as a construct. So if the employer is satisfied, that means, or I equate it, or there's a high correlation with employability. And in this research, what we have found out is that employability, in other words, is a strategy which one uses to get the job, to be successful in the job, to grow in the job, and when required, change the job. So it's a strategy, and it is a capability which you have built. And it is very different from employment. Employment is incidental. Employment will happen at the end of your 2 years of B school. Employability is what one needs to focus and how you develop that strategy. And if we go a little bit deeper and we say, who contributes to employability, there are two major factors. One is the self-directedness of the individual himself, and the other are certain contextual figures or certain contextual influences, which I like to call the proximal and distal influences on employability. Proximal are what are within your control, and distal are those factors which may not be in your control but most certainly shape your employability, like the environment of your B school, the kind of exposure they give you, the kind of platforms and podiums they have, the kind of industry interaction. And also the employer contributes very much to employer satisfaction and employability, because there are various aspects like career anchors, etc., which I will get into and we can discuss further, and the kind of importance the employer puts on those career anchors. Because how come, and this is very strange, you would have seen this, under the same set of conditions, there are some people who come from the same backgrounds, same B school, in the same organization, but some break records while others break themselves.
Right.
So that, my friend, is employability.
Correct. Okay, so while you're talking about contextual support or even career anchors, that define what an employability would mean to a certain individual, I would really like to understand how are career anchors, related to the overall effectiveness of your career growth or even choice of your career, right? From starting, choosing what stream to go into.
Bang on. Before I take that question, what I will do is I'll throw a question back at you. When you start a journey, what's most important?
Knowing the destination.
Absolutely. So if you want to go to Calcutta, you'll go to the railway station and you'll get on the train going to Calcutta. You won't just catch any train, right?
Right.
So the first thing when you're starting your career is to have an end in mind. You need to have a goal. You got to break that down into measurable milestones. Then you got to do a skill audit and understand yourself. Everyone is not the same. And there is where career anchors plays a very important role. So to keep it short, now Edgar Sheen did a fantastic job and you can read all about his research. But to keep it short and explain it to you in one simple line, if I were to ask you, there are certain things which you do in your job, what would that one thing be which you'd not like to give up about your job? right? So what Edgar Sheen did is he did a longitudinal study with the same bunch of Sloan graduates over a period of time. So he understood what they wanted to do, their career moves and motives while they were in B school, when they passed out, 3 years later, 5 years later, and 10 years later. And 10 years later, 44 students they went in different directions. But when he did a structured career interview, what he did find is the reasons for making these shifts or these career choices could be bucketed into 5 major buckets and 3 smaller buckets, which were large enough to be called buckets. And those 8 buckets was then named, or that's why he came up with the concept of career anchors. So what are those things which anchor you to your particular role? Now, career anchors are, of course, influenced by 3 factors. One is, what do you believe you're good at? Okay. Because it's very important to know what you believe you're good at. 2 is, what are those factors which motivate you, or what are those factors which demotivate you? And 3 is your values, right?
Values.
Now, of course, the latter aspect comes much later in your work, but the first to create a very, and can be identified very early in your career. So if I know who I am, I know what my skills are, and I do a skill audit, and I have complete clarity. And if I plan my career, I know where I want to be. Most certainly, I'm going to be successful. And HR folks generally like people who have a clarity, who have done research about the organization they want to join, who know what they want with their career. Because I prefer to have someone who says, this is where I want to go, and I know that the organization is going to help me get there, rather than someone comes and tells me, sir, le lijiye na, kuch bhi kar lenge, whatever you say, sir. Right? So if you don't know whether you want to go to Calcutta or you want to go to Chennai, you'll go and you'll be stuck in the railway station only, not deciding which train to catch. So it's very important to have that goal in mind. Understand what your strengths are. Understand what your values are. And career anchors is one of those tools which help you understand that aspect. Right? There are various psychometric tools also which are very important, and it's good to know about yourself. Because you have probably spent 24, 25 years with yourself before you're coming in front of this interview, right? Make the best about it. Make the best of it. Know yourself well, know where you want to go, and then use this job as one of those trains to get there. The job can't be the destination. It's only helping you in your journey get to your destination.
So I've defined the second segment as accelerate the career progression. Okay. And my first question regarding this is more about how can one strategize and follow, let's say, a preset career path, or how can one decide really what should be the milestones and goals?
All right. So so on the outset, first you got to understand there's this Japanese concept, and it's quite famous. A lot of y'all would have heard of this concept known as Ikigai, which is finding your purpose. Right? That is step one, because many people run about to be very successful, and they run up this corporate ladder only to realize that this ladder is leaning on the wrong wall, right? So sometimes there's this herd mentality. I did this, why everyone is doing it, must be good, I shouldn't miss out. So a lot of the youth suffer from this very common phobia known as FOMO, fear of missing out, done because they're afraid they may not get it, not realizing that that is what they actually want to do. So the first step is understand who you are, understand what kind of a job you'd like to do, understand what are your career anchors, understand what are your preferences, what are your skills, study so the whole concept of Ikigai is nothing but to find an overlap on what you like to do, what you're good at doing, what the world wants, and most importantly, what the world is ready to pay for. If you find that overlap, that is step one, right? Because then you'll enjoy your job, right? So I can teach you all the strategies, and you can use the strategies to get an accelerated career. But if you miss out the most important part about satisfying yourself, it's not going to help. It's not about having an accelerated career, but having a fulfilling career. And that is something which I think is the most important part, because if you love what you do and you do what you love, you'll be successful. So the first step is finding that out.
Right. So in fact, I remember the last time we spoke, you mentioned a topic called as self-directiveness. And you also spoke about a paradox that goes between like hard work and smart work. So how does this, fall in place with, let's say, career fulfillment or career acceleration in general?
You see, a lot of people use this cliche, I'm a smart worker. Smart worker, it's a cliche. And I'll tell you why I use this cliche. 20, 30 years back, this would work. You know why? Because there was information asymmetry 30 years back. The previous generation, information asymmetry, who has more information is king, right? They say knowledge is king.
Right.
Not anymore, because everyone has a smartphone, everyone has the internet, everyone has all the knowledge available to them at the push of a button. Right? What you need is the ability and skills to use that knowledge, right? And now let's understand, if you're getting into an organization and you're from one of the better B schools, everyone is smart. So we go back to the age old philosophy that there's nothing which can replace hard work, right? What's the difference between a successful person and another successful person? Not intelligence, not support, but the difference when the person shut his shop. That's it. When he decided that that's it for me. Right? If you keep pushing yourself, because people say, there's so much competition out there, I tell you, if you fall in this category which I'm going to share, there is no competition. How many people are ready to work beyond what they're paid for? How many people are ready to give services more than what they're getting paid for? If you fall in that category, my friend, there is no competition, because there are not enough people in that space. Most importantly, most people do enough just to get by and keep their job. So if you fall in that category where you're ready to put in a little extra, everyone likes that free, no?
Right.
But it's not free, it's an investment. It's the investment you're putting in yourself. It's the investment you're putting in yourself to go ahead. Right? So everyone works 8 hours, right? Till that time you're at par. That little extra effort you put, and again I'm using hours just as a measure, but hours is definitely not a measure. But all things put together, if two people are working, if two people are a championship wrestler is practicing, he's practicing for 8 hours, and the challenger is also practicing for 8 hours. The only difference, and I'll share this story, when a championship wrestler was asked when he wasn't the champion, he says, 6 hours of training is gone. What are you doing? He says, 6 hours of training is done. And my coach asks me, what do you want to do? I tell my coach, I want to practice. You know why? Because I see the current champion practicing. So I practice half an hour more. Again, after 6.5 hours, when my body says, you know what, Fred, we can't do anymore. I close my eyes and I see what's the champion doing. I see him practicing, so I practice more. And then finally, when my body absolutely gives up and my mind also tells me that's enough, and I close my eyes and I see the champion also closing the door, what I do? I go back into practice, because till now we were at par. This is going to be my winning edge. Right? So at the end, that little extra is what makes the difference, because everyone is putting what is required. Are you ready to go and put in that little extra? And if you're not willing to do it for yourself, then what are you going to do for your company? Right?
So is that the real reason or the secret behind several master's degrees that you have, or even the PhD, the extreme pursuit of the PhD that you currently have?
All right. So you see, first, when I did my first master's, I was doing what every good Indian son does: become a doctor, become an engineer, fulfill your parents' aspirations, and then decide what you want to do with your career. It is only when I landed up doing my job at one of these famous pharmaceutical companies, and it was a dream job. Everyone in my class would have loved to. They would have given a hand and leg for it. Why? Because you got to deal with the gas chromatography. 1 month later, I realized, oh my God, what am I doing? Because we are so much after what we think is good for us, rather than realize what we actually want to do. It is only after doing all of these things I realized my actual purpose. Went, worked in a startup, worked for a few years, understood which field I wanted to get into, then pursued my second master's in the field I actually wanted to develop myself in HR. There were certain issues with employability and people getting placed, etc. And I very much wanted to contribute to that, which is why there was that inspiration to get into my PhD. Surprisingly, 3 years into my PhD, when I got one of my first publications done, I shared it with my wife, and my wife also is a fellow HR practitioner. She read it, and she told me it's nice, it's nice. And I got that feeling. I'm like, all the scholars and all my professors are patting me in my back. You got a Scopus publication. It's like a fantastic achievement. And my wife says it's nice, only to realize that what's very funny, that there's so much management research which happens, but there are very few people who are actually aware of it. Do you know there's 500 research papers published every year only by the IIMs? 0.01% of the HR practitioners actually know they exist, right? So I was not going to let my 5 years of research and the fact that I was so passionate about impacting employability actually just be limited to a few scholars, which led me to make my book. That gave me that passion that, what, let's simplify this. Let's take people and let's tell people what they need to know. How do they achieve their Ikigai? How do they understand what their goal is? How do they understand themselves and create a step-by-step program for every individual so that he doesn't have to make the same mistakes which I did to learn what I learned, right? If you learn from your mistakes, you're a wise man. But wiser people learn from other people's mistakes, which is why I'm writing that book for everyone.
Let's dive into rapid fire. Let's get to know Frederick more. And so, Frederick, my first question to you will be: you have written a book. So, who is your favorite author? Any one book you'll recommend?
There's so many. I don't want to name all of them. Stephen Covey is very good, but I really like Chandramouli The Catalyst. If there's one book I recommend for every B schooler, it's simple. The language is very nice, and I think it's a very good book. Chandramouli Venkatesan.
So next question for me: what is the dream destination which you like to visit? Is it an exotic? What beaches, mountains? How is it?
I'm actually a mountain person, but if you'd ask me two places which I want to visit, I want to visit New York and London.
New York and London. Okay.
Yeah, it's romanticized so much in so many Hollywood films that you really want to go there.
Okay. And what is one compliment you receive every time from your managers, your colleagues, or from your juniors? One compliment.
They often say that I'm more mature than my age, so I take that as a compliment. It could also mean that I look older than I should, but I like to take the positive part of it.
Right. The final question, Frederick, goes to you. What is the advice you like to give to all the young HR managers out there, HR executives?
Okay. I think first and foremost, you got to understand the business and stop having this HR mindset. You have studied HR as a specialization, right? But you need to understand business. Once you understand business, you use this HR knowledge to take that business forward, right? Don't let that HR be a barrier for you. Think business, act HR. So I think the first and most important facet is to differentiate between employment as something incidental and employability. And if people are joining these schools, they need to understand that they need to focus on developing this. Two is, once you get into your career or once you start working, try to find out what appeals to you and overlap in what you are good at, what you'd like to do, what the world needs and what the world is ready to pay for, and that overlap is known as Ikigai. Find your Ikigai and then audit where you want to go. You need to have your destination up there before you start. You need to have your goals. Once you have your goals, break it down into milestones, review your milestones, and the most important thing is reflect. Because somebody very wise said that if you do the same thing again and again and expect a different outcome, then that's the definition of insanity. So if you're reviewing and you're seeing you're not progressing, then you got to reflect what I need to do differently, right? Have this strategy and reflect on this goal, do a skill audit and keep developing yourself till the very end. Mahatma Gandhi said, live like you're going to die tomorrow, but study like you're going to live forever. So I'd like to leave it at that.